On April 1st, 1987, a driver cruising down South Perry Park Road in rural Douglas County, Colorado, saw something down an embankment, something that made them pull over. What they found would remain one of Colorado's most haunting, unsolved mysteries for the next 38 years. The answer to who did it was there the whole time. It was hiding inside 2 simple paper bags. This is the story of Rhonda Marie Fisher, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and the serial killer who thought he had gotten away with everything. Rhonda Marie Fisher was 30 years old in the spring of 1987. In the weeks leading up to her death, she had been staying with various acquaintances in Denver, moving around, building a life the way many people do when things get hard. The last confirmed sighting of Rhonda alive was the night before her body was found. She was walking north on Monaco toward Leetsdale in Denver, a woman alone, on foot, in the dark. The next morning, April 1st, a passing motorist spotted her body down an embankment along South Perry Park Road, roughly 35 miles south of where she was last seen. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Now, 35 miles is a long way from where she was walking. Someone drove her there, someone who knew what they were doing. At the scene, investigators did something standard for the era. They placed paper bags over her hands to preserve any trace evidence that might be under her fingernails or on her skin. It was routine, procedural. Nobody thought much about it. Those bags were then sealed, logged into evidence, and placed into storage. For 38 years, nobody tested them. Investigators worked the case hard in those early weeks. They tracked down acquaintances, looked at a person of interest who had been close to Rhonda in her final days, but he was ultimately cleared. They cross-referenced serial offenders active in the Denver metro area throughout the late 70s and 80s. One name kept appearing on the edges of the investigation: Vincent Darrell Groves. But in 1987, forensic science wasn't what it is today. DNA profiling had only just been introduced in the United States. The tools to connect Groves to this crime simply didn't exist yet. Years passed. Decades passed. In 2017, investigators reopened the file and submitted evidence for DNA testing. Nothing usable came back. The case went cold again. Rhonda's parents died without ever knowing what happened to their daughter. Her brother passed too. For the family members who remained, the silence became its own kind of grief, an open wound that never closed. Meanwhile, the man investigators had quietly suspected for years had been dead since 1996, convicted of other murders, serving time in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and dying behind bars. His name was Vincent Darrell Groves. Vincent Darrell Groves was, according to Colorado authorities, one of the state's most prolific serial killers. His violent activity primarily targeted vulnerable women across the Denver metro area from 1978 to 1988, a decade of predation during which he moved through the city largely unchallenged. In 1982, Groves was convicted of the murder of Tammy Woodrum. He was sentenced to 12 years. He served fewer than 5, less than 5 years for murder. Then he walked out and kept killing. By 1988, he was convicted of 2 more murders: Diane Mancera in Douglas County and another victim in Adams County. These became some of the earliest successful applications of DNA evidence in Colorado's courts. It was DNA that finally stopped him. Groves died in prison in 1996. Today, investigators believe he was responsible for at least 12 homicides, and the true number may be higher. He was also documented to have been involved in sex trafficking and drug distribution, which gave him access to the most vulnerable women in Denver. Rhonda Fisher fit exactly the profile of his victims. She was a woman who was temporarily unstable in housing, walking alone at night. Investigators had long suspected Groves, But without DNA confirmation, they couldn't close the case. That changed in 2025. In 2025, the Douglas County Sheriff's Cold Case Unit reopened Rhonda's file one more time. This time, they looked at something that had been sitting in an evidence locker for 38 years. Those paper bags, the ones placed over her hands at the scene in 1987, the ones nobody had ever thought to test. Crime Analysis Supervisor Michelle Kennedy submitted them for DNA analysis. What came back was described by the sheriff's office as exceptionally rare, a viable DNA profile extracted from paper bags nearly 4 decades old. In October 2025, that DNA registered a match in CODIS, the National DNA Database. It linked back to biological evidence from 3 homicides committed by Vincent Darrell Groves in 1979. After 38 years, Rhonda Marie Fisher finally had an answer. The sheriff, Darren Weekly, released a statement that said, "While Vincent Groves cannot be held accountable in a court of law, we hope this long-awaited resolution brings answers and a measure of peace to Rhonda Fisher's family and friends." Rhonda was a mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Investigators were able to reach one of Rhonda's cousins, the only surviving close family member. She was, in their words, very happy to finally have answers. There is something quietly devastating about that phrase. Very happy. Not relieved, not joyful. Just happy. Happy that after 38 years, someone finally told her what happened. This was the 7th cold case Douglas County solved in 7 years. The tools that made it possible didn't exist when Rhonda died. The people who most deserved to hear the truth didn't live to hear it. But Rhonda's name is no longer a question mark, and in the world of cold cases, that matters more than most people know. If you've been following cases like this one, where DNA is rewriting history and giving names back to the forgotten, subscribe, because there are more stories like Rhonda's, too many, and they deserve to be told.